me raise a philosophical question with you for 1 second, because I've always thought the role of a an elected official or a leader is both to follow the desires of your constituents and, on occasion, to lead. If one makes the argument that despite the fact that her constituents were supporters of Fenty, does that necessarily mean that the council member should follow the constituents, or should the council member attempt to lead the constituents in what she feels might be a better direction, Vincent Gray?
Well, I think that it is the role of the council member not to simply follow his or her constituents. I mean, that's not why we have a representative form of government, and you are supposed to rely on your representative to use his or her best judgment. But I think that there are certain issues like the future of our city and the direction that we feel our city should go, and who best embodies that. That where if there is such a disconnect between our representatives' judgment and the people's judgment, then something is a little out of whack.
Before we let her, the incumbent, I don't want to speak for her, but I would say that having covered the city of the last few years, I do know that Mary Cheh tried to work with the incumbent Mayor Fenty, and it was he who closed all the doors on whatever the issues were with many council members. And I mean, that's one of the reasons he lost, is that he had a mayor who was not cooperating on major city issues. Wouldn't that be a legitimate reason not to support him? Whether people like what he's doing on education or not.
At some point, I'll be able to say
we're going to let you
why I
speak
did what I did.
Since Tom and I seem to be making all of your arguments for you, they may not be
No,
need
carry
for you.
on.
Well,
I
mean,
think it's great.
here's where I see it. When I endorsed Mayor Fenty for re-election in August, I basically said on the two issues that matter most to Ward 3, education and quality of life issues, building parks, rec centers, libraries, playgrounds, he's gotten those two things right. Now, I know Councilmember Cheh has been involved in a number of issues with the Fenty administration, but I think Ward 3 residents were asking her to weigh that and weigh that against what they feel were the most important
Councilmember
issues.
Cheh, what about that? I mean, was it your personal, and many, as you know, many council members just could not get Mayor Fenty to work with them on virtually anything. Was that the reason you endorsed Vince Gray?
No, I am very much in touch with my residents, and I knew of the sentiment in favor of Mr. Fenty, but what you have to consider is what we should do best going forward. I give all credit to Mayor Fenty for the work that he has done, looking, in the rearview mirror. But going forward, we are now at a stage where we've spent down the surplus. We're deeply into our funds, and we're at the very top of our credit limit, and we have a crunch, as you know, on the budget. And unfortunately, the mayor alienated all of his natural partners, not just the council, but nonprofits and community groups and others. He, in effect, disabled himself from going forward. So I do very much know the needs of the residents and their desires, and it is to go forward with education reform. The best person to do that, though, looking through the windshield going forward, was not now Mayor Fenty, despite all of the good things that he had done and for which I give him full credit. But going forward, the person who would be able to do that now, because he's able to unite the city and because he's able to bring in all of these groups, would in fact be Vincent Gray.
But no Michelle Reed.
Well, that wasn't automatically the case, but here's something to keep in mind. In terms of education reform, Vincent Gray was a central player in changing the architecture of how we govern the schools. And that architecture is in place, and Mr. Gray is fully committed to school reform and to going forward. Now, I know in a campaign, people say things and they emphasize negative things, and they say things sometimes that are a little stark. And he was painted, by his opponents that it would be going back, we would have no school reform. Well, that's flatly untrue. And he is the best person now. And that's why, even though this, the sentiment was for Fenty, obviously, even though that was the case, I felt it was important for me to identify who would best get us where we want to go, and who would best be able to bring together all of the partners that we need now in a different economic time.